show about sports by people who love sports. Welcome to Sports Isolated. Here's your host, Callum. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Sports Isolated. Joining me on the show today is high performance coach from the R66T Academy, Shaun Seigert. Shaun, how are you, mate?
Very well, thanks, Callum. Good to see you again.
Yeah, we obviously first got to meet each other back in, what was it, the end of 2017 when I was preparing to go to India for the first time with Flinders University for my placement, and obviously got to meet Sadik there, who's basically your right-hand man at the R66T Academy now. And then obviously I found out I was going to India 6 months later to go on a cricket tour with you when you were back at the DLCA.
Yes, that was. I do remember it was pretty hot, like that time of the year in India. It was a hot time of the year. So I remember it well.
Yeah, Delhi's always a very interesting place to go, and it certainly can send some culture shocks down your spine, that's for sure. Shaun, do you mind telling us a little bit about your cricket playing career, and then obviously how you got interested in cricket coaching, because you've been doing it for a long time now?
Yes. Basically, I'm a country boy. So I grew up in the country, up in the mid-north of South Australia, and I sort of came down to school here in Adelaide sort of when I was 15. Last couple of years of school down here, so decided I wanted to make the move down here to actually pursue sport. So I played cricket. I left school, started playing cricket at Prospect. Started off my grade cricket at Prospect. Played out there for 5-6 years, and then went and played at Kensington. So they're the two clubs I played for. Played, sort of state second 11 cricket, a bit of that. Although cricket back then was different. There was no structured state second 11 sort of competition. It was just random games that were organised between a couple of states. I played a little bit of that and stayed under 23s for SA. But, sort of then I got to a stage where I started having problems with my knee. So I had to get that operated. And basically then the doctor sort of said, if you continue playing cricket, you're going to have to knee operation. So that sort of shut down my cricket career, which was disappointing because it was sort of some of the best, most consistent time of my career as a cricketer. So I sort of didn't want to walk away from the game and sort of say, well, that's it. So then I was playing at Kensington, and I sort of said to the club coach at the time, a guy called Ian Bowler, I said, do you mind if I sort of help out as an assistant coach the next year? So, which I did, and I found out I really enjoyed it. Kensington at the time were a strong club. I think they won it the first year. So I sort of then got into this coaching thing, and then I got a role as the head coach of Petrie Gully. And sort of started off sort of taking control of a team and a club and trying to sort of, develop them and have some success. And then sort of not long after that, I got a job at the Thacker, running the indoor centre and the junior coaching there. Then I got the job as the state under 17 coach, and then the state under 19 coach. So I started sort of getting involved in high performance and all that. And then sort of the Darren Lehman Academy sort of stuff started to happen in the background. And, my role continued at the Sacca, and it became I was doing the Lehman Academy, I was doing my role at the Sacca, I was doing the state under 19, so I had a fair bit going on, and also coaching Petrie Gully. So I was doing a lot of coaching. And then, that sort of got to a stage where I probably started enjoying doing the Lehman Academy stuff more because it gave me the freedom to actually develop a program and not have the constraints of an organisation. Like you have to sort of do things in a certain way. It was basically an open book how you wanted to sort of evolve and develop this thing. So I started to do that more and more, and I got married, and I went overseas and coached in Denmark for 6 months. Started doing some stuff for the ICC, so I started getting a range of experiences, and and I suppose things just continued to evolve with the DLCA as coach there, and the program just became bigger and bigger. It started off as a suppose only a couple of cricketers coming out to a stage where we started getting sort of quite a group of players out. Yeah, so that's sort of how it all came by default a bit, because I had to retire from cricket sort of prematurely, I suppose.
Yeah, you've obviously spent a long time at the Darren Lehman Cricket Academy. You were there for 14 years, running their high performance program. I suppose, can you tell us about that experience and I suppose some of the players that you were able to coach during that time? Because there's definitely some good ones that played for England, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the first person I coached there was Monty Pansear. So basically, I got asked to help. There's two players that came out that started with a guy called Monty and another guy called Bilal Sharafet. So they came out, and we were just doing some batting stuff with them. So that was just sort of a few sessions a week. We were just doing some batting stuff, and basically Monty went back at Christmas time because he had to go back to training camp with an England squad leading into a tour to India. So he went home, and I'd sort of worked on his batting for sort of 3 months, and within 2 weeks of him going home, he was picked for England. He was going to India, and then he got picked in the first test, and he helped a guy called Collingwood, who you probably know, get to his first test 100. I think Collingwood was on about 70 when he went into bat, so he managed to hang in there and get him to his maiden test 100. And then his first test wicket was Sachin Tendulkar. So all of a sudden, in the space of about a month to 6 weeks, he went from a sort of a nobody in Adelaide to this sort of rising star on the international scene, and became this sort of cult figure around the world. So that's sort of how it started with Monty, and then we sort of started getting, some more cricketers out the following year. That same year, I had another guy called Phil Mustard, who played a bit for England, a wicket-keeper batsman. And he came out here, he had made a first-class 100. He went back in his first game of the year for Durham, made 100. So all of a sudden, these things started to happen a bit, and as the word got out a bit in England about, this program out in Australia. And so we started getting a few more players out, and then we sort of struck up a relationship with the ECB through Mike Gatting, and they started sort of sending sort of 8 to 10 players out every year for sort of 6 months. And some of that was just for them to grow up and get away from England and actually learn some different cricket. So this program started to evolve, and I was working at the SACA at the time, and Rod Marsh worked at the SACA. He was head of cricket at the time, and I used to ask Rod, I said, what made the program that he ran with as coach of the Cricket Academy, what made that work? Because there was all those great cricketers came through that program that Rod ran. So I started to get some ideas on what he did and think about implementing those things into the program. And the other one that was important in terms of the evolution of the program was Mike Gatting. Mike came out to Australia as a young lad. He was a first-class cricketer, but he played grade cricket in Sydney, and a lot of it was him growing up as a person. He did it pretty tough in Sydney. He had to ride a push bike around, and all of a sudden, that, in his words, was the making of him as a cricketer. It wasn't about hitting cricket balls and things like that. It was about him developing as an individual. There was a big factor in him becoming an international cricketer. So I started to actually think about how those things would actually be implemented into the program I started to develop. And, lots of good cricketers sort of came through that. They were, some of the guys were out of the England under-19 program. Some guys were plucked out of nowhere. They hadn't even really done anything at a county. There's a guy called Liam Norwell who literally just got plucked out of Cornwall and hadn't played a game for Gloucestershire. He went back that year and made his debut for Gloucester and took 6 for on debut. So yeah, all of a sudden, like all these sort of cricketers, and they started really making a mark in cricket in England. And I know that one time most of Yorkshire's first class side was made up of cricketers that had been out to the academy. I know at one stage half of England's one day team had been out to the program here. So yeah, it was good to work with cricketers that were sort of in that a really important time in their career, like sort of 19 to 21. It's a very, your career can go one or two ways a bit. You can stagnate or you can really take off. Obviously, Joe was one of those cricketers that came out in those early days. But yeah, I mean, yeah, saw lots of good cricketers, and one of the things that stood out to me was the good cricketers were hungry to learn out here. Like it's not always the most talented ones that have gone on and become really good cricketers at that stage. Like it was more about them as people. And what drove them. There were critical things that really stood out for me, and I could almost predict which one to be successful and which one I knew. Like he'll go all right. Like I remember a guy called Scott Borthwick, who you may or may not know.
Yeah.
Played for England. Played a lot of cricket for Durham. He's at Surrey now. But to give you an example of what I saw is, I remember a particular session. Like my office used to be an indoor centre there, and we were doing our fitness testing in the morning, our yo-yo test, and I remember him coming in to my office upstairs, and he said, "I don't feel very well. I feel lethargic. I've got the flu, blah blah blah." And I said, "Look, mate, go home." He said, "No, I'll do the yo-yo test. I'll do it." So he went downstairs. We were in the yo-yo test. Not only did he do it, he won it, and he did it in an elite time, like it was, I don't know, level 23 or something like that. And I said there and then, I said, "I bet you he makes it." They see things like that. Like most lads would have said, "No, I'll go home." But he didn't do that. He somehow found something within himself to do it. But he did it at an elite level. And then he said, "Right, I'll go home." So I saw lots of things like that, insights to their character, and you could sort of tell, like, yeah, he's going to go right. This lad, he'll go a long way. Or on the flip side, someone struggles with that sort of stuff. You think, yeah, he's going to. So yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of things in terms of 6 months is a long time. You go through a lot of things, ups and downs. Probably a lot of the lads. They, the lads don't do that well out here, but they learn a lot about themselves, and they've tended to go back and do really well.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the players that have come through the academy, obviously there was Liam Plunkett in early days who played in the World Cup for England. Jason Roy, who obviously has, come on really well, even played some Test cricket for England. Obviously Alex Hales as well, who's played for England a fair bit, played Test cricket for England, or all formats for England, and obviously dominated the Big Bash last summer. We're going to talk about one particular player that you coach now. So you obviously got to work with Joe Root, and you developed quite a strong relationship with him. What was he like coming out to Australia as a 19-year-old? And I suppose what's he like now? And what are some things about Joe that stood out, I suppose, compared to some of the other cricketers?
The impressive thing about Joe was Joe the person. He's not the most talented cricketer I've had the fortune to work with. Like, he had ability, make no mistake. He's not the most talented. And there were things about him. He's like at 19, he was like a 28-year-old. He was very mature as a person. His understanding of what he needed to do was as good as I'd seen. He knew what he needed to. He knew what he needed to do to be a Test cricketer. Most lads at 19, they sort of do, but they don't. But Joe was very clear on what he needed to do. Just things like he used to talk about, like he had to turn up and train well. Didn't want to. Now, most lads don't understand that. But he did. And not only did he say it, he did it. We do a lot of game sense training. He was very good at that. Like, again, bearing in mind at the time, Joe hadn't played a first class game. He was just a county second 11 cricketer. He'd played England under 19s, but and he was just fluffing around in second 11 cricket. He wasn't going anywhere. But he used to love this game sense training, and he was very good at it. He would always work out what to do better than anyone I'd seen. But I can see how that's actually transferred in the international arena. Like, he's a guy with not a big game, but he finds ways to succeed in all three formats of the game. because he knows what he needs to do in a situation and how to apply his skills in a situation. So his game sense is very, very good. Funnily enough, like I think when he was out here in Adelaide, he probably tried too hard, certainly in grade cricket. He actually only averaged 28 out here. I think he was so determined and so hungry to do well. Like I think he tried too hard, and that can work against you. The performance sort of flows. It doesn't. You can't force it. It's sort of you've got to. You know, if you try too hard, it almost becomes a distraction in your mind. I think he was a little bit like that when he was out here. So yeah, I mean, he was just a very mature person. Worked really hard. And just knew what he needed to do to get better every single time. When we debrief sessions, he was very good at reflecting and talking about what happened in that session and what needed to happen next. In terms of now, I mean, I obviously I don't see him much because he's sort of busy. He's a man now on the international scene, but he's a bit quieter than what he was sort of back then. He's sort of very reserved. He's got a young family now and all that sort of thing. So he's got other things on his mind. But Joe's very giving. I mean, last year, roughly this time last year, I was over in England at the launch of the Root Academy app at Lords. To give you an example of him as a person is, so we've been doing this filming all day at Lords in the indoor centre there. And Joe had been involved all day with all these groups of people and whatever. And anyway, at the end of the day, we're standing upstairs in the cafeteria part there of the indoor centre, and there was a young lad there that wanted Joe's autograph. He was there with his father, and Joe sort of walked upstairs, and he said to the lad, he signed his autograph. He said, "Do you want to go down to the nets? I'll throw you some balls." So this was 5 o'clock in the evening. He'd been there since I think 9:30 in the morning. He'd been doing this stuff all day. He took this young lad downstairs and threw him some balls in the nets, and basically, then sort of came back upstairs, grabbed his stuff, and caught the train back up to Sheffield. So he's very, very grounded. He's very level-headed, and he's just, he's just a quality human being.
How good do you think he can be? I suppose Alistair Cook was able to get 12,000 runs. Obviously, KP's obviously talked about as a great English batsman as well. Do you think he can succeed both of those in terms of, I suppose, game impact and, I suppose, numbers?
Well, I mean, Joe is, again, he's at an age now where he's probably moving into his best years. So as a cricketer, you get to 28, so around that 27, 28, which is where he is now. You sort of move into that part of your career where generally it's your most productive. So he'll be very close to, if not, better than those two you mentioned. I mean, I think he'll go down as one of England's greatest players. Interestingly enough, and this is another little story about Joe when he was out. Again, at the time, like England, actually, the year Joe was out, England, there was an Ashes tour in Australia, and it was the test where England beat Australia on the 5th morning, and then it rained in the afternoon. But Joe, I remember sitting in my office, and the day before the test started in the indoor centre, the England players came in and trained in the indoor centre. Anyway, the head selector at the time was a guy called Jeff Miller. And he walked upstairs into my office, and he sort of put his head and he introduced himself, and he said, "Oh, who have you got out here this year that we've sent out to your academy?" And I sort of mentioned the names, and I said, "Joe Root." He said, "Oh, Joe Root. They reckon he's going to be the greatest player of Yorkshire since boycott." So even then, there was big raps on him, even though he probably hadn't done a lot. But the raps out of England at the time were that he was going to be one of the great players.
Yeah, Siegs, you obviously were at the Lehman Academy for a long time, and then I suppose towards the end of 2018, you decided to make the transition to the Root Academy and help Joe start a high performance program in Australia. And obviously 2019-20 was the first, I suppose, year of that high performance program. So I suppose, can you talk us a little bit through that transition, and I suppose some of the things that you've been doing over the past couple of years?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I mean, it came about. I mean, the thing was the Lehman Academy was probably taking a bit of a different direction, in terms of, they're under new ownership and things like that, and some of the stuff didn't sit that well with me, and they had different views on how the way forward. So, I mean, I'd already sort of actually started talking to Joe's father, Matt, and sort of discussing about going over and, would they be interested in that. And so that sort of happened. I mean, I actually flew to, when England were playing Sri Lanka, I flew to, which would have been November 2018, I think. Yeah, I flew to Sri Lanka and caught up with Joe's father there, and we sort of talked things through. And basically there, I sort of got on board. So yeah, and I mean, one of the things Joe wanted to do was sort of give young lads the opportunity that he had, because it had a profound impact on his cricket career. I mean, speaking to his father, like he said, Joe went from around in second 11 cricket to he became a serious cricketer after his time out in Australia. So Joe wanted other cricketers like him to have that opportunity and have some sort of program like a RAM. So that sort of, that's the reason behind it is to sort of develop or keep this program going, that young players from England and different parts of the world can perhaps have that opportunity that he had that made such a big impact for him. So yeah, I mean, we're obviously running that program, but the other thing is obviously the tours. I mean, touring's a great opportunity to get exposed to different environments, different players, and find out more about your game and test your game in different conditions. The other thing that I do is run camps. So in a lot of ways, I've always tried to run a bit of a pathway. So depending on your age or your ability, you can sort of plug into programs, but there is that consistency in what we do and how we, I was talking to you before about those philosophies that no matter what program you do, even if you're a 10-year-old kid in a camp, there's still those elements of those philosophies running through the programs that you're getting that sort of experience. So no matter what level you're at, you're going to get the same type of program and the same coaching and the same messages how you develop as a cricketer. So yeah, we're sort of, I mean, I've been doing a fair bit of stuff into the US. I mean, because of the situation at the moment, that's sort of got to go on hold a bit. But, working with Willow TV, and they're about to launch professional cricket over there. So it's sort of, working at an academy level there and trying to sort of develop cricketers to feed into that system. We're looking to grow the footprint in England in terms of camps and connecting sort of so they can then get into the system to get into other programs and things. So I was actually supposed to be running a few of them over there this winter, but I'm sure that's probably not going to happen now because of the situation. And also pushing into Europe and things like that, getting a bit of a footprint into there. And so, there's, I mean, I do what I suppose my programs, but there's also people in the UK, like UK part of it, like Joe's father, Matt, he sort of sits, there's another lot, Ben Stevens, that does stuff in the UK. So it's sort of collaborating with them and sort of, growing what we do. And they run as you may or may not know, there's an online coaching platform that Ben does a lot of stuff on. So, which is sort of relevant currently, I suppose, in the current climate, doing all that sort of online stuff. So there's lots of different programs kids from, different parts of the world can sort of do. We're sort of, hopefully towards the end of this year, going to be doing some stuff in the UAE as well. So, but unfortunately, it's a bit, just sort of, you got to sit and wait a bit with how things are going to pan out, mate. It's, the next sort of 4 or 5 months is going to be interesting to see what the next 12 months sort of look like, I suppose. We're all a bit in the dark with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like there's obviously some really good plans in place for the Root Academy in the future, and hopefully the virus can disappear sooner rather than later so that we can get back to playing some cricket. Siegs, what are some of the differences between the Root Academy and the Lehman Academy that you've found so far? Obviously, you've been at the Root Academy for a short amount of time, but what are some of the things that you've noticed so far?
Well, in terms of what I do, like, I mean, I don't know what the Lehman Academy do now in terms of their program. I think they've changed it a bit, but I basically I run what I ran there because I know it works. Look, one of the things that we do that I don't think anywhere in the world really does it is the mental part of the game. I mean, we tied up with a guy called Graham Winter, who you may not know of. Graham's here in Adelaide, but he's first class cricketer. He's put a book out, Mindful Cricket. You know, he's worked with SA Cricket, Cricket Australia. So he has a really strong background in cricket. He worked with Rod Marsh at the Cricket Academy. Graham sort of with us, we actually bring this aspect of training, the mental part of the game training, because it's such an important part of the game, but it just doesn't get trained. Like, you know, everyone's doing skill work and stuff like that. Well, yeah, that's important, but it's one part of the game. So there's probably a real strong point of difference is bringing how do you actually train the mental part of the game. So we do designated training sessions that bring that. And so it's not just talking about the theory of it, it's actually practically how you implement it into a training / game type environment. No different to what you do as you're practicing a cover drive. You're actually practicing the mental skills exactly the same. So there's that. The other thing that it's the self-reflection and the stuff that goes in around the actual training that I think is different, because that's where a lot of the learning happens and what you do next happens. So, I know one of the things the Lehman Academy didn't see the head coaching role as a full-time role. Well, I actually think the stuff you do outside training is some of the most important stuff to do, because that's where you have the conversations and you actually do working with players that I think sometimes is the most important stuff, because that's where you can talk about where a player's at and what they need to do to improve that you don't necessarily do in a training environment. So it's the self-reflection, and I'm really strong on, and I think it's a critical part of what we do, because you can spend as many hours in the nets, but if you're not in there learning, just in there not getting much out of it, wasting your time, a lot of it. So I've always been big on that stuff and continue to do it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, it's, as I said, I don't really know what sort of program they're running now. I mean, I've heard it's a bit different. But I believe intensity needs to be there if you want to get better, because you've got to bring things out which you're not good at, where you struggle to actually then address those things. If you train in a comfort zone, those things never come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the mental side of the game, and I suppose if your head's not in the right space, then I suppose everything is going to fall out of whack, no matter how physically fit you are.
Well, you're right. I mean, everything you do in a physical sense starts from what goes on in your head. So your mindset is sort of I know Graham uses the term your batting stance, how you're set up to actually then. So if your mindset is wrong, your technique is going to fall apart. It's going to break down. Your mindset needs to be right to actually execute your technique. But you need to train how do you actually develop that, and how do you bring consistency and control so you can bring that mindset every time you go out and play, whether you're batting or bowling. And that's challenging unless you practice it and understand, what are the different parts for you as a cricketer that make that work.
Yeah. Siegs, obviously COVID-19 is a very serious situation in society, and hopefully it obviously goes away sooner rather than later. But obviously in a post-COVID-19 world, what are the plans for yourself and the Root Academy in the future?
Well, I suppose, I mean, obviously it's evolving with high performance program. So again, in terms of this sort of year, we're sort of up in the air a bit, but we're certainly pushing on that's going to happen. The touring side of things, because again, I think gets back to what I said to you before, is I think playing cricket's the best way to learn. And lads get a great opportunity by going into different environments. They get challenged differently. So, you know, that's something that we're developing and growing and doing more of. The camps, you know, into the UK and certainly the US and those parts of the world. You know, working with Willow TV. Hopefully that can, once this gets out the way, we can start doing some stuff there with them to actually into their professional league. They're looking to kick off next year. UAE, sort of hoping to get that up and going by the end of the year. You know, working with some schools. I mean, there's a couple of schools in the UK we've sort of aligned ourselves with now to help with their programs and form closer relationships. So I'd like to see more and more of those sort of schools become on board where we can work with them. So yeah, there's, you know, and I think, I mean, I'm doing a little bit of online coaching stuff at the moment. So again, out of this situation, that might be something that just grows because of circumstances. And of course, they've got the online coaching app that, you know, that's sort of running lots of different skills and things like that that the lads around the world that's proving pretty popular. I mean, some of that stuff's getting over 1 million views. Some of the drills and stuff that they put on there. So, you know, that's pretty popular. I'd like to get more of the programs I do onto that platform. So it gives access to more people around the world to actually do, you know, the sorts of things I'm doing or we're doing out here, so we can spread that around the world. So yeah, there's lots of things, but I suppose you have to sit tight a bit at the moment, mate, just to see how it all unravels.
Yeah, obviously, sounds like the academy's got some really great things planned for the future, and obviously, you know, the academy is very, very early days, and who knows where it could end up, I suppose, in, you know, 10 to 15 years time. Well, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I know Joe's very passionate about it. I mean, and Joe's brother also, Billy. But Joe's, you know, he's done a lot of stuff for the academy. Like, he does a lot of stuff for the coaching app. And it's actually something that he wants to, when his cricket career's over, that he wants to get more involved in. So yeah, he's passionate about it. He you know, while he's playing, he wants it to sort of establish itself that, you know, and I think he'll play a big role in it, you know, down the track.
Yeah, it's obviously really good for the players to have the input and obviously help those cricketers who are coming through. Seigs, thank you so much for joining us on Sports Isolate. It's been a real privilege to catch up with you and talk cricket with you, and it's something I certainly enjoy.
Thanks, Callum. No, it's been great to catch up, mate. It's you know, out with me a couple of years ago, but it's good to have a chat about cricket. So I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. For those of you who are watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.